Have you ever wondered how one of the most devastating wars in history, World War II, started? It's a question that stirs intrigue, isn't it? Let's delve into this. There were several catalysts, and the first was the League of Nations weakness. Established after World War I to promote global peace, it failed to prevent the rise of aggressive dictatorships. In Italy, Benito Mussolini's fascist regime took root, promising stability and expansion. Meanwhile, in Germany, Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party seized power, exploiting economic turmoil and exploiting nationalistic sentiments. Hitler's aggressive policies culminated in the invasion of Poland, a move that sparked the war. Across the globe, military leaders in Japan sought to expand their empire in Asia and the Pacific. While all this was happening, Great Britain and France initially tried to appease Germany's aggression, hoping to avoid another global conflict. But as we know, their efforts were in vain. The stage was set for a war that would change the course of history. The US initially tried to avoid involvement, but how did that change? As tensions escalated across the globe, President Roosevelt and Congress began to prepare for the possibility of war. A peacetime draft was implemented, the first of its kind in American history. Military spending skyrocketed as the nation bolstered its defenses. An embargo was placed on Japan, aiming to halt their aggressive expansion in the Pacific, while support was extended to Great Britain, a nation already embroiled in conflict. But the real game-changer was the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. On that fateful day in December 1941, Japanese forces launched a devastating strike on the American naval base in Hawaii. This act of aggression thrust the United States onto the front lines of the global conflict. Shocked and outraged, the nation rallied, ready to fight. The attack on Pearl Harbor marked the end of America's neutrality and the start of its direct involvement in the war. Once involved, how did the US wage war in Europe and the Pacific? Let's dive in. In Europe, the United States adopted a strategy of gradually closing in on Germany. This strategy began to take shape in 1942. Key events like D-Day marked the largest seaborne invasion in history, aimed at liberating France and moving towards Germany. The Battle of the Bulge was another significant conflict where American forces heroically pushed back a surprise German offensive. Victory in Europe Day or VE Day marked the end of the war in Europe, a momentous celebration of peace. Flip the globe to the Pacific and the strategy changes. The US employed an island-hopping strategy targeting strategic islands to get closer to Japan. The Bataan Death March and the Battle of Midway were pivotal moments, demonstrating both the brutality of war and the turning of the tide against Japan. The US fought a two-front war, employing different strategies in Europe and the Pacific. But what was happening on the home front during the war? While US soldiers were fighting overseas, a different kind of battle was taking place back home. The war had a profound impact on American society, particularly on civil liberties. The fear and suspicion surrounding the war led to the internment of Japanese Americans. This was a dark chapter in American history, where over 100,000 individuals of Japanese descent were forced into internment camps. This raised significant constitutional challenges, prompting debates about the balance between national security and individual rights. Meanwhile, women stepped up to fill the roles left vacant by men who had gone to war. They worked in factories, flew planes, and even served in the military. This marked a significant shift in societal norms and paved the way for future women's rights movements. Americans also showed their patriotism by supporting the war effort through war bonds, victory gardens, and rationing. While the soldiers fought abroad, the home front experienced its own battles and changes. How did this devastating war eventually come to an end? As the tides of war shifted, the world was confronted with the horrifying reality of Nazi concentration camps and the genocide of Jews. This horrific revelation underscored the dire urgency to bring the conflict to a close. Simultaneously, unbeknownst to many, a secret project was underway in the United States. The Manhattan Project, as it was known, aimed to develop a new weapon of unprecedented power. This led to the creation of atomic bombs, which were ultimately dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The catastrophic devastation brought about by these bombings led Japan to surrender, marking victory over Japan Day, or VJ Day. In the wake of the war, the United States experienced a period of economic recovery, as industries pivoted from war production to peacetime goods. However, politically, the world had shifted on its axis, setting the stage for a new conflict: the Cold War. World War II ended with an atomic bang, leaving a world forever changed and setting the stage for the Cold War.